Welcome to Behind the Mic, a podcast from the Concrete Foundations Association featuring discussions with some of the leading professionals in today's concrete industry. This series features interviews recorded at the World of Concrete 2020 conference in Las Vegas. And in this episode, host Jim Beatty interviews Bruce Neal, president of Modern Foundations from Woodbine, Maryland. They discuss Bruce's extensive experience in the concrete industry, spanning over 40 years of attending the World of Concrete show. The conversation delves into Bruce's philosophy on leadership, investing in his business, and adapting to challenges such as labor shortages and equipment maintenance. Bruce has lots to share, so let's jump right in.
Welcome to another podcast from Behind the Mic by the CFA. And in this particular episode, we got a chance to sit with one of my friends here in the concrete industry, a longtime leader in the Concrete Foundations Association and in his own business, Bruce Neal, president of Modern Foundations from Woodbine, Maryland. Bruce, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jim. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's really good to have you here. It's an electric atmosphere. We continue to be doing these at World of Concrete 2020 in Las Vegas. Maybe you can hear a little bit about that in the background, the din of all the visitors from all the booths. You've been a pretty good week here looking around.
Yeah, this show is always a great show for me to come to. Get so many new ideas. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but I come every year because it's got a lot of information and there's always new technology.
How many years have you been coming to the World of Concrete?
We were talking about that the other day. I think it's over 40 years. Yeah, I think 68 was the first year we came.
1968. Wow. That's getting back there. That predates me. I started in 1992, and I feel like I've been at it an awful lot. But yet every year, 40 years of World of Concrete, and you continue to come back and see new stuff, don't you?
Yeah. You know, that fact that it's been here for all these years, it makes it a little bit easier, and there's more things to do around here. But the show's been good. Actually, I said 60. I meant 78 that we started coming here.
Well, we're not gonna worry about that extra 10 years, plus or minus. That's okay. Bruce, I know an awful lot about your business, and there's so much to talk about. What do you recall from your first experience in concrete?
Wow. When we first bought the aluminum forms, Western Forms was one in our area and sold it to us. And I started out as a carpenter, and my dad was a general contractor and carpenter subcontracting company. So I grew up in the construction business, and we got the first set of forms, and I remember my dad said, figure out how to build these things and how to make money at it. And he said, you got to pay for them in a year.
Wow.
He made a challenge for me back then.
That'd be a big challenge to buy a new set of forms and pay for it in a year.
Yeah.
How'd that first year go, you think?
Actually, it did very well. We had great support from Western, and there was a local contractor that was using their forms, and so they really helped us out a lot to get started. Learned the business pretty quickly, and it was a challenge, but I was up for the challenge at the time.
And so you were doing foundations at that time for your dad, who was then continuing on as a general contractor?
Correct, yeah. So he did the woodwork, and I did the concrete work.
Yeah, so how long did it take you in business before you were outpacing what he could put on top of your foundations and you were looking for other customers?
Oh, that was almost immediately. He was starting to scale down at that point, and I was scaling up. So I went out to other contractors and worked for them and did foundations. But we quickly grew the business in a year's time and kept going from there.
Wow. So you started right away with technology in aluminum removable concrete forms. What was the next piece of technology that added significantly to what you did?
Well, that went on for a number of years with the aluminum forms, and we moved from a Northern Virginia area, which was using a lot of concrete foundations, up into the Baltimore area, closer to where I live. And it was a little bit of a challenge convincing builders to switch from masonry blocks to poured in place. But that took a couple of years to transition, and there were a number of companies around us that were doing the same thing. But technology-wise, we moved from pouring out of the concrete trucks to using pumps and starting to get into pumping concrete. So that we progressed into a lot of different fields, excavation being one of them as well.
About how often do you, just if you had to think about how often do you see technology playing a significant role in a change of direction or a change of improvement in your business?
Well, that's why I come to the show. I mean, some of it's yearly. Sometimes it goes a long span, but the biggest thing that changed early on was the use of the total stations.
Sure.
And when we went to that, it increased our quality of work, our accuracy, certainly brought us above a lot of other contractors, with the builders having more trust in what we did. So it's constantly changing. Even this year, we're looking at new technology in concrete foundation and concrete construction in general.
You've always been a part of technology, or technology's always played a part of your desire to be in the business. Wouldn't you say that?
Oh, yeah. Maybe a little too much. I don't keep up with it, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm a gadget guy to some extent. Like today, I was looking at a new spin screed for doing some finishing that we're doing. There's always something out here to look at.
Boy, there is. And so you, again, going back to your history, that first year, very successful. It took you a long time to mature that market, and you were finding yourself against Block through a lot of that time. How long do you think it took you before you saw, some would call them rivals, but really peers in the industry that helped you elevate the entire industry away from Block? Because I sense that the Maryland market is almost 100% cast in place foundations.
It is. Well, 81, I separated from my dad and went out on my own.
Okay.
And he was basically retiring at that point. And when I did that, the competition had grown quite a bit, but there were a couple of key CFA members in my area that were leaders in our area, and we were always communicating with them, and that was good competition for us. And we put ourselves a little bit step up above some of the others out there. And so competition was always fierce in my area, but it wasn't always quality competition.
As it is around the majority of the country, I think. Certainly you have access to a broad range of peers as you've become so ingrained into the culture of the Concrete Foundations Association. And from what I know in most of the markets represented by our members, really that's the case. You have some quality competition, but you've got an awful lot of really strong and fierce competition from not so good quality.
Right. Early on, when I went out on my own, the Bartley Corporation was one of the ones that I had talked to back then, Buck Bartley, and they're part of the ones that helped me get into the CFA. And Western Forms certainly encouraged it back then. So we started with the CFA. I've forgotten the exact date, but I know it was close to 81, 82.
I think that's really right in there.
Yeah. And we weren't as active back then, but it was good to get involved with them and start learning a little bit more about our business, and helped us to focus more on the quality and how we can do a better product. And because we did have a little challenge convincing builders in the Baltimore area to give up the block.
Sure.
And why they should do it. And so it all helped with that association to get that hurdle taken care of, and kept on growing. We started another business basically in the Baltimore area to help grow that, and that expanded my business quite a bit. So the CFA was an important part of all that, because from those early years, whether I was at the CFA meetings or I was just calling up a member, and it was mostly the Bartleys and Western Forms back then, it was a few years later that we ended up working with Precise Forms, and they also were a good resource to get information from. So the association has been so important for many years.
And you've contributed an awful lot to that. You were also one of those people that I think are first to say that you get a heck of a lot more out of it than you put into it, but you do have to put into it. You've been past president of the association, long time involved in committee structure, board itself, and really the undergirdings of where that association was going for the industry, and helped us put ourselves in place to produce for this industry, and particularly for the members, but also for the industry. Is there anything in particular that you think has helped your business the most when you think of the CFA outside of the peer relationships that obviously have helped you get going in business?
Yeah, a couple of examples were, and more recently in the past few years, was the research that the CFA does on cold weather concrete construction, and more recently was rebar, having oil on the rebar condition. And the CFA has grown to the point where many local inspection agencies and counties recognize them. The word has gotten out well enough that even our local counties know about the CFA and know about the research behind it. And so their involvement, the CFA's involvement in both code enforcement and code changes has brought their reputation to the local counties and state. And that's helped us to get past hurdles with some of the local inspectors. So recently, the most recent one I can think of is the oil on the rebar.
Right.
And once I presented the information from the CFA, they never questioned me again.
Well, it is great to have resources. You're also a lifelong learner, and I know you to continually try to challenge yourself to know more, to see more, to be more. I had a chance to come out and visit your warehouse, your office space, and even though you're a removable form contractor, that wasn't enough for you. You put yourself in place to try a new forming system and to try to create a bigger commercial building from it. So you're not afraid to take on new challenges, are you?
No, maybe I do a little too much. Maybe I should focus a little bit more on specialty things. But our business has changed a bit over the years, and I think everybody's facing issues with labor and where the future is going to be with the labor force. So we're looking at different ways to address that. I have two boys that are in business with me, and they happen to be managing other businesses. One's a ready mix and one's a stone shooting business. So I said, where's the future? It looked like the future was going to get tougher and tougher to find labor to do the aluminum form business. And so I'm looking for alternatives, but stay in the foundation business, do what I know, and the method might change.
Right.
We tried some of the ICF construction. They're all good products. So I started thinking recently our focus should be on offering our customers what they want and what they need and not limited to one type of product.
That's a really interesting point. And all the podcasts that I've been a part of, I think that's probably the first time where we've really hit on that subject, that being a professional contractor in this industry is a lot about answering the needs of your client and not just selling them on the services that you can provide.
Right. And I think that's a big focus for us right now. We have customers that are very in tune to energy efficient homes.
Yep.
And in my area, they make very good use of the basement foundation for living space, not just a storage space. Mm-hmm. And the property is getting so expensive that they want to get more out of every square foot that they do. And so we're looking at better insulated homes in total. And there's a lot of ways to do that in the foundation end, but it also gets down to what's cost effective for the customer. So we're trying to address a broader market and what they want and be able to satisfy their needs in one company.
Right. Well, you are very much like such a large percentage of the marketplace for concrete contractors. You come from a great background. Your dad moved you into the industry, and now you've got, as you said already, you've got two sons that have joined you in the business. And sometimes it can be a temptation to bring your sons and daughters into business with you, and sometimes there's a resistance. I don't want them to follow in my footsteps. I want them to make a bigger life for themselves. But you really chose to set your sons up in business with you, Jason and Michael, running two different core components that really added to the measure of your ability to produce for your customers.
Yeah, that was intentional. Growing up with my dad, he helped me a lot. There was a time where I wanted to expand, but he didn't. And so there was a hole back there, you might say. And I didn't want that with my boys. I wanted them to have the opportunity to do whatever they wanted to do. I wish I'd had three boys. I'd have one that was focused on our foundation business, but I didn't. Right. So the two of them have expanded their businesses the way they wanted to. They service our company, and we're all housed in the same building. And my wife works with us as well, and it's been a great family experience, and we don't regret any of it. Yeah, they could have chosen other professions to get into, and they both went to college for general education and didn't focus on any particular thing. But I'm glad they chose the path they did, and I gave them the opportunity to grow it to whatever they wanted to do.
So many of our listeners on the podcast are probably not going to have lived through the Great Recession from a business perspective. And yet you, I know, were impacted greatly by it. And yet I'm really curious about what I know to be true from your pursuit of other products. You're not just a wall foundation contractor. You're not just a ready mix producer through one son. You're not just a stone slinger through another son, but you've got other avenues of your business development plan that have come to you. Is that a byproduct of having gone through that great recession, making yourself diversified and more versatile?
A great deal of it is, yes. We were always looking for ways to fill in some of the gaps, to not depend on one source for all of our income. But the recession, we were working with many national builders, and when the market crashed in our area, it crashed big. We probably lost about 65% of our revenue in 1 year, and that's hard to recover. And so we said that we're not going to allow that to happen again. So we started looking at other ways to keep the ready mix company going, keep the stone shooters. And we got into retaining wall, manufacturing of retaining wall products. In the construction industry, I would look and see where the needs were. And so in some of the site development, I saw some tight conditions where they were putting up retaining walls, looked at what are the issues with that. And that drove me to think about manufacturing. I already had the ready mix. Why not just pour it into a form and start doing some of the manufacturing side of it? So that's continued to grow, manufacturing retaining walls. And we use the Stone Strong Gravity retaining wall product for that. And then because I have a bunch of people in a building doing that already, I said, well, what else can I do while I'm having some idle time? Because everything comes in surges in business, especially in construction. You have your busy times and then you have your light times. How do you keep everybody busy? We've expanded to doing some precast foundation work now. We just recently launched our EnviroCast concrete foundation, precast foundation work. So yeah, we're always looking for ways to diversify but stay within our basic knowledge of concrete construction.
So you come, again, going back to your humble beginnings, coming from a carpenter, getting involved in concrete, having a basic set of forms, and yet you're heavily capitalized. And to a lot of those listeners that we have out here, I don't want you to give away your business secrets, but we've got a lot of listeners that I know the response when they come to a show like World of Concrete is to look at all this equipment and go, there is no way on earth that I can afford to do some of this. How can a company like yours sustain itself in such a competitive market with so much technology at your disposal, but also on your balance sheet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I won't say we're the best at that. We've had our challenges. We made it through the recession, but it was a shoestring. So it's a combination of knowing your costs and knowing what limits you can go to when you're making deals. You can't always be the low bidder. It's probably not a good thing to be. So it's part of that, having a good staff to help you make sure that you know what your costs are. And it's gotten more challenging, but you do a lot of thought about what the costs are going to be in the future. And we do a lot of spreadsheet work to try to predict what we're going to do. So some of it is just good budgeting. Some of it is just good luck. We work with banks to help us grow. So you build partnerships with people, and that helps you get through it.
What if you had to think, and this is going to be a curveball question and you may not be prepared to answer it, but when you think about the advice that you've given your two sons over the years, what do you think is the most consistent piece of advice that you've given them as they're getting into this industry?
Wow, that is a good question. Well, I think our basic nature is honesty, fairness, trustworthy, and follow-up. So I think what they've gotten from me, hopefully, is that we are an honest business that stands behind our work, and our customer is one of the most important aspects of our business. They stay focused on that as well. We went into the ready mix business and we had the front discharge trucks when every other company around us was rear discharge. And then people say, why did you do that? And the reason was it's better for the customer. They can eliminate some of their labor because the function of the front discharge truck and the visibility, and the driver is part of your team out there because he helps you in your production. So I think that's probably what they got the most, and that's been successful for them.
Yeah, I think that is really good advice, and there's a lot of characteristics of being a positive person in that. You've got an inventive spirit, a creative spirit, and to me, there's a lot of seeing in you and seeing through you the ability to not turn away a challenge too. What do you think is the biggest challenge you've faced consistently over these years?
Oh, there are multiple. Labor is in recent years, getting the most challenging. When you're in a good economy, it gets more difficult to find new good help. But the equipment has gotten to be one of the biggest challenges. It's hard to afford all new equipment, so you have to find a way to maintain that. When you have a large fleet of equipment, there's a lot of maintenance going on, and that gets to be a major expense in your business. It's hard to predict. Building the maintenance staff to handle it and coming up with good procedures for maintenance. But with the onset of the new emission program that these trucks have, it brought in more challenges than we were prepared for. If you don't do it properly, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars trying to fix the problems that generate from the emission systems. So I wouldn't say there's any one thing. It's multiple challenges. Labor and equipment is one of the largest things I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And labor, I think you'd be hard pressed to talk to a contractor, probably in any market, but certainly in the concrete industry, and find someone that doesn't say that labor is their number one challenge right now. But it's very interesting to hear you talk about equipment too, because I would certainly think that it makes logical sense to me. It's important to know those characteristics. And so someone might ask, where do you get your education? Where do you learn? Now, we've said multiple times in this podcast, particularly this week, that failure is oftentimes the biggest predictor of success or the biggest creator of success. But where do you get your education, if not but learning by school of hard knocks?
When we go to the CFA summer meetings, you get to talk to everybody about all their problems. We all like to complain about things. But,
share, not complain.
Oh,
share,
okay.
right.
Excuse me. Share.
Right.
But that's a great source every time we go. So that's one of the places. And the two boys, they share with other people. One of them is the current president of the Maryland Ready Mix Association. So he gets a lot of involvement there and understanding of what's going on in the ready mix business, but in general business. So there's a multiple number of places that we get that from. And coming here to the world of concrete, you're talking to a lot of different folks about many different topics. But the hard knocks is probably the biggest one. We make our mistakes and we learn from them, but it's a combination. So it's a combination of all of them.
A lot of these contractors, particularly smaller contractors, fall into the trap of owning a job versus owning a business. And to me, one of the distinctions, my just personal reflections about the difference between owning a job versus owning a business is investing in your business. And certainly I see that in you, but what's your perspective of that thought of owning a business and how important, and some might say imperative, it is to invest in your business in the right ways?
I always feel the people that you employ are looking to you for what's the future hold. And if you don't invest in it, they start looking around saying, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, 10 years. And that's a very difficult position to think through, because there's not always an opportunity for somebody to get to be a manager, but it's the idea that you're looking for expansion to give other opportunities to people. So right now, I've told all of my staff that with the startup of this precast foundation business, the sky's the limit. We can have growth way beyond just doing house foundations. There's lots of opportunities there. There's some more trucking opportunities because we have to ship it. So it opens up a lot more opportunities for people within the business to grow and find other positions if they want to, or feel confident that their position is going to be secure for a long time.
Have you found that historically to be the case in your business, that it's important to find those opportunities and encourage those of your coworkers to find them rather than to become pigeonholed into one area?
I think for many years that wasn't so much of an issue. Prior to the recession, earlier years, the guys wanted, not everybody wants to be a leader, be in charge of all that. They just want security.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. You need all of it. But there's some that want that challenge. And I'm not good at seeking out those people or identifying them all the time. But when it comes up in front of me, it hits me in the face, I try to seize that opportunity. One of the things in business that's tough to do as an owner, and that is to coach and educate people in business growth, because you just don't have the time to do it. You might have the desire. We tried starting a school after hours to teach some of the guys about the basics of layout work and more of the carpentry side of it. What does the carpenter have to do with our foundation to build on it? And what do we have to do to make sure it's right for him? We're both looking at the same information, but we're looking differently at it. And so I was trying to start an education program where we would go through that, and it's exhausting. Doing it after hours at night or on the weekends, they're tired, I'm tired. So it's a real challenge to, as an owner, to take that time to train people.
Wow. As Bruce Neal looks into his crystal ball into the future of the concrete industry, what do you see?
I see a lot of the same things are going to continue on, but I see us expanding into more concrete construction products, techniques, and I think it's going to be partially addressing the labor shortage in the industry. How do we still provide that product? So I just see it's going to be a strong business for many years, but I think we need to adapt to other products out there. So your ICFs, your cast in place, your precast, your composite wall systems, I think they're all going to be viable parts of our business for the future. But I don't think we are going to change the industry to be all concrete, where some people would like to see that.
Right.
I don't think that's a realistic expectation for the future.
Will it remain an industry that a young person can find that passion, that rhythm, that interest in a challenge and make a life for themselves?
Absolutely. Concrete is going to be the product that is always going to be in our future, and its usage is going to just keep on expanding. We learn more things about concrete construction every year. We're now dealing with 8,000 PSI concrete, which for commercial world, that's not a big deal. For residential, it's a big deal. And how difficult it is to produce an 8,000 PSI consistently right. So there's always going to be challenges in the concrete industry, but the usage of concrete is just never ending.
Fantastic. Well, Bruce, thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting down with me. And I know you've got a plane to catch as you head back to Woodbine, Maryland, and the offices of Modern Foundations continue leading your crews and your employees into their bright future. Glad that we've had this opportunity to sit down. I hope you'll come back and maybe share some more with me on the podcast at a later date. We'll find something new to talk about. Maybe drill in specifically to some of your learning on EnviroCast and some of these other avenues that you're pursuing.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It's great that you're doing this for the CFA, and I love helping out and look forward to doing more of them with you.
Fantastic. Well, podcast listeners, I appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful for you. Bruce Neal is truly one of those lifelong learners, a great pioneer still to be had throughout the concrete industry. Pioneers getting started yet every day, and a great example of not giving up, and more so than that, just finding interest in ways to pursue your passion. So I want to encourage you to do that. Catch our next podcast. Stay with us on iTunes. Get subscribed if you're not already, or you can follow us at cfawalls.org through our education tab.
Behind the Mic is brought to you by the Concrete Foundations Association. You can learn more about us and about becoming one of our #CFA Concrete Pros by visiting our website, cfaconcretepros.org. If you're a concrete professional interested in being part of a future podcast, reach out to us by email to info@cfaconcretepros.org to start a conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Mic.